only place for everything Vikings. 6, 1, 2, Vikings.
Welcome back to the 612 Vikings podcast. I'm Dustin alongside Drew, and we're coming off just under a week past a very unfortunate loss between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions for that number one seed, for the division, and all that. But before we get into that, Drew, how we doing? We got, a pretty long break after that game. We're going into the Vikings and Rams game. We got a couple playoff games today, tomorrow, and then on Monday, Vikings and Rams.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit disappointing, but on the flip, if you're, I guess, the more optimistic fan, you could say like those first game. I mean, this essentially was a playoff game. It had that playoff game atmosphere to it. You could just say like the pregame jitters or the adrenaline for the first game of the playoffs is kind of out in the way, and then you're not the one going home at the end, so you have another crack at it. So kind of like a little bit of a double elimination style if you must, but I think that's more the optimistic point of view. I think this one, I mean, for me at least, I felt like I was a little bit more nervous going into this Detroit game because it felt like such a playoff game feel to it where, kind of going into this one, I don't feel that like really big adrenaline rush. Like I'm worried. I'm like, oh, I got to walk around eggshells with my emotions because it's the Vikings and all. So I think this one I'm a little bit more even keel. I'm ready to go and just kind of see how it plays out and just let the chips fall as they will and or the cards fall as they will and just see what happens for the postseason and kind of go from there.
Yeah, so does this make sense? Like, I feel like the Vikings and Lions game that just happened, I feel like that was a more at stake game than a playoff game that we're about to play because I don't know, you had so much on the line for that Vikings Lions game. You had the division, you had the first seed, but you don't necessarily go home. Yeah, I mean, you have to go play on the road, so you're really not at home. But this playoff game, yeah, you got to win, otherwise you are out. But to me, it just feels like that Lions and Vikings game was, the most at stake game that you could have so far to this Vikings team in this the schedule so far. So what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I think it kind of had the more of that NFC Championship game kind of feel. Like the
Yeah.
crowd was really rowdy. They were really making it difficult for Minnesota to really kind of get anything going. So I think a second time around, Dan Campbell had the infamous "we'll see you in 2 weeks" thing. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite him because I know the Rams have kind of bulletin boarded that, even though we're not even the ones that said it. But if any way to get motivation, you can. I don't know, however you do it. So,
Yeah.
we'll kind of see how things go. And there's no guarantee we see him in 2 weeks, but kind of like I said, it kind of had that NFC Championship game kind of feel to it. Like if you win, you're going to the Super Bowl, and that's kind of how I think a lot of fans on both sides kind of looked at it, especially looking at like the Twitter comments and the banter between the fans. It I don't know. It just seems like it's very deep rooted hatred now between Vikings and Lions fans, and I
Mhm.
think both sides have definitely taken it a little bit too far. I think there's some uh, I don't say allegations, but or accusations, I should say, about how Lions fans were during the game. I think we could maybe talk about that a little bit. Van Ginkel's wife uh, was saying that they were kind of like heckling her, touching her. Same with Dalton Reiser's wife, and then Blake Cashman's wife as well. So they were kind of treated pretty poorly. But my guess is they're probably all sitting all by each other. So my guess is probably you just kind of got unlucky sitting by a little bit of a maybe by a fan who had a little bit too much to drink. But the one that we're still kind of finding out, which I'm surprised we haven't really heard more about it, is the line. Apparently, there was a Lions fan that pushed a pregnant Vikings fan down the stairs who was 8 months pregnant. So, it's unfortunate that some people, if it is true, if all this stuff is revealed to be true, it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't really know the lines of being a sports fan and then taking things personally and too far. And it's kind of like that
Mhm.
tribalism kind of feel to it. It's like it's either my team wins or no team wins. And I think you're kind of starting to see a little bit more in politics as well. And I think it's just a sad part of how the world's kind of turning out to be. So hopefully all this stuff is, not as severe as they're saying it is, but if it is, then I think I think the owners would really have to take a good like self look in the mirror, because I think this is kind of becoming a more common issue. Because I think there was an issue with Matthew Stafford when he was there for the postseason. So I think the NFL would have to step in and do something, because this is kind of getting be a little bit more too far. So I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, Dustin, if you want to kind of keep that going a
Yeah,
little bit.
so like I have like 2 or 3 points on that. Like number one is, why lie about any of that? Like if you're I guess I don't see any reason why you would lie about, getting shoved down the steps or getting heckled or harassed or whatever it is. So I mean, I don't know, like I believe, it can be that bad. You're going into opposing team stadiums. I know Vikings fans aren't usually that bad, if at all. And then my second point, kind of leading into this too, is I feel like Lions fans are almost as bad as Eagles fans. Like they're not on the same tier, but it's really trending that way to where, their fans are really just gonna heckle you a lot. And it's really sad to see, because Lions fans, they're experiencing 2 winning seasons in a row where they're winning the division. They're having really good games and years, and all this stuff. One step away from the Super Bowl last year. So it's kind of getting to them as well. They don't know how to act, and that's kind of cliche to say, but like they really don't. They don't know how to act because they're winning, and I don't know. Like it's a really tough situation to kind of monitor, where these fans don't have to act like that. I mean, there's sportsmanship, and then there's being a rude fan, like having too much to drink, whatever it is. But that's kind of like what I'll say on that. But I don't know, it just is kind of unfortunate for that to all happen in Detroit, in your own division, on the road. So
Yeah, I think just the main thing, I'll kind of leave it with this, and then we can kind of move on a little bit from the incident, kind of look for next week. But I think the main thing is you just don't want this to become, if it is true, you don't want it to become a precedent, because you've kind of had the issue with Philly fans, and I kind of get, it's Philly, that's just what they're going to do. But at some point, the Bucks got to stop somewhere. You don't want a second one like that on your hands, where it's a consistent thing where if you're the NFL, like I said, you can't have it be a precedent where it's just continually happening, because or else fans are going to just think that it's not very safe to go. And I get you want to defend your home turf, and you want to say, oh, this is our field, that I get that. But on the flip side, you want to also make sure that people, like, we're still people at the end of the day. You want to make sure they're getting home safely, and just kind of do it like that. So I think it's just more surprising that if we'll kind of wait and see if there's any more details or anything reported, from what we've heard. I hope we don't have to continue talking about this, but it's just one of those things where I think at the end, I think it'll just be one of those things where, people know about it, and you don't want to start developing that reputation where your field is now becoming unsafe. So yeah, I guess I'll just kind of leave it with that, and we'll kind of go with kind of look forward into the future a little bit, and kind of avoid looking at the past.
yeah, and just kind of leaving it on that note, if some of you guys are living under a rock too, the Vikings and Rams game will be moved to Arizona. I will not be at SoFi Stadium, because if you're also under the same rock, there's wildfires everywhere in California, Los Angeles, sorry, just everywhere. It's can't be played at SoFi, so. Game moved to Arizona, where a lot of Minnesota snowbirds will be in attendance for that game. So it's a good healthy amount of Vikings fans for attending. Not that there wouldn't be for the SoFi or at SoFi, but yeah, good amount of Vikings fans for this game, and I think it'll be much more of a home game than it will be if we have played it at SoFi. So. Drew, what's your take on playing at good old Arizona? The last time that we played there, we let's see, what was that? 2021, when Greg Joseph missed the field goal to win the game. So yeah, not good memories as of recent, but hey, maybe we
Yeah.
can make some better ones under KOC.
Yeah, I think it's, I think this is a move that definitely benefits the Vikings more, which unfortunately you don't want it to have it where under the circumstances that is currently happening in California. I think it's something the players will get adjusted to. I know they, I think for player safety standpoint, I was going to say I think it benefits both teams more because Arizona, if you don't know, has a natural grass feel to it, and unfortunately, SoFi Stadium is like the number one stadium for ACL tears, and you could add another one to the injury list on that with Christian Darrisaw. So I think that's just one that I don't want to say I'm excited for, but in the I'm excited that it doesn't have to, or I'm relieved, I should say. I'm relieved more that we have it going to Arizona because we don't have to worry about that ACL factor into it, and hopefully having it not ruin the future for a potential postseason run. So I think that's, if you want to find a silver lining out of this whole unfortunate situation, there's that from a football standpoint. And I do want to say this too. So I saw a lot of people, they were kind of questioning on why they were doing this move. Obviously for the wildfire aspect, of course, but some people are saying, well, it's an indoor stadium. There's no need to move it. So if you are not at a place that is very prone to wildfires, I actually have been out in the West for living for a few years. So I do know what that atmosphere is kind of like. So the smoke makes it very hard to breathe. The air quality makes it really tough. It's if you want it actually makes the sun like have that orange look to it because of how much smoke is in the air. So it makes it hard to breathe. And if you don't know, SoFi Stadium is it's an indoor stadium, yes, but there's a little gap in like a certain area of the stadium where it brings in more natural light, and it's an open air. So the air can come in, natural air comes in and goes into the stadium. So with that being there, the smoke actually goes into the stadium, which then makes the air quality bad. And when you're going and basically running, doing a bunch of cardio on that field, it makes it hard to breathe. So, that's the kind of thing you don't want. It kind of burns your eyes too. It could definitely hurt that. So I think this was a smart move at the end of the day from the NFL to move it to a place that's a little bit more safer for both teams. Unfortunate situation for LA, and obviously prayers are going to be up to them, and hopefully that they can get that fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a couple days ago the Chargers were practicing outside with masks on. So, like you said, not ideal circumstances for this all to happen, but luckily the Chargers will be on the road. I think, yeah, on the road to
Against Houston.
Houston. That's
Houston.
who it is. Yep.
Yep.
So
they play today. So at the time of this recording.
yeah, so that's a good scenario for them. They don't have to play at home. So with that said, both teams they're pretty healthy going into this. Outside of wildfires and all that, both teams are pretty healthy going into this game. But besides, Christian Darrisaw, who has been out since the first meeting, I guess towards the halftime of that meeting. But other than that, no major injuries for the Vikings, no major injuries for the Rams. But with the Rams, they are play-wise kind of inconsistent, where they'll have a really good game, a good statement win, and then kind of play more pedestrian the next week, or have a stretch of games that they do that, or vice versa. Very inconsistent for the Rams. And, we'll see what Rams team shows up on Monday night, in what is it, Safe Farm Stadium. So, but both teams pretty healthy. For the most of the year, they've been pretty healthy for the Vikings at least. So, Drew, what are we kind of expecting in this game for, game wise? Because Darnold coming off of that Lions game, you could tell that there was so much pressure on him. Just was not the same Darnold that we've seen all season outside of that Jacksonville game. So what do you think that Sam Darnold will come back down to earth, or not down to earth, but I guess play a little better, I guess I'm trying to say, where opposed to the Lions game, he just was overthrowing everybody, just not the same Darnold that we saw this past year.
I think he will. And this is a scenario that he's been in before. So we can point to the Jacksonville game. I think he threw like 3 or 4 interceptions, and then he played pretty well against Tennessee. I know it's Tennessee. They're one of the worst teams in football, currently having the number 1 pick, but it's still one of those things that shows that he does have the ability to bounce back and play at the level he was before. So, and that was the start for their big winning streak. So hopefully that's the thing that can happen again. But I think that's the big thing is he's got, he'll bounce back, just kind of take a step back, like I said earlier in the show. This is kind of like that first game playoff jitters kind of, wiped away. You've kind of you're in that spot, and you're not in that spot anymore where it's like you have to play for number one seed where everything's on the line. You want to play for a bye and all this. So I think you can kind of take a step back, relax a little bit, and kind of go from there. And I think for this game, I don't think it's just a Sam Darnold thing. Obviously, it will fall on his shoulders because he is playing the most important position on the field. But I think the big thing is the O-line has to be able to block a little bit more consistently. There were times that he was pressured nonstop on just easy looks, and he just couldn't have any time to throw. I think the receivers were fine for the most part. I think there was some times where the other team got a little handsy. They weren't calling it, but I think that's just more being physical. I think they got to work on beating press and physical coverages a little bit more consistently. There's been a couple times in the past that we've seen Justin Jefferson kind of fail to beat those press physical coverages off the line. So I think he's got to be a little bit better at that, find a little bit more consistency out of that, which if that's the case, that leaves a little bit more Jordan Addison. There's a ton of times where he was just wide open. The ball never went his way. 2 touchdown passes that were not thrown to him on wide open throws. So I think this whole thing where we've been bit in the butt with this before is we got to stop having tunnel vision on just one guy. It's great when he has that moment, go ahead and have that tunnel vision, just feed him. But you also have to distribute the wealth a little bit, give TJ some looks, give Jordan Addison some looks, even Jalen Naylor on some vertical routes. So I think just distributing the wealth is going to be another thing too, because when you're able to do that, that leaves Justin Jefferson more on those one-on-one looks that you're looking for. So I think that's just the one thing that we can do offensively. And defensively, I think we did pretty good for the most part. I just think we ended up running out of gas because our offense couldn't do anything. So the time possession was definitely on Detroit's side, where we're just consistently going 3 and out, or we would go for it on 4th down, didn't get it, and then they'd have to drive the entirety of the field, and then they would score on that drive. So they were pretty much gassed. So I think that that's just something that I think the defense will be fine. I do think this will be a defensive game, so I'm expecting something a little bit on the under if you're a betting man out there. So because LA's defenses play pretty well too. So I think those are just the 2 things that I'd like to see a little bit better, kind of bouncing back from the Detroit loss and kind of going into this postseason. And hopefully this could be a thing where you kind of get Kevin O'Connell's first playoff win under his belt and go from there.
Yeah, with that said too, like when in the first meeting, Vikings and Rams, Puka Nacua was coming off that 21-day window, coming off of IR, and kind of shocked the Vikings team and the fans too, because we didn't expect Nacua to play. And here he went off for, a pretty big game. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but still, kind of outplayed Cooper Kupp in that game too, where, now Nakua is going to play for sure. Kupp's going to play. Kyren Williams is going to play. You got that whole Rams squad. You've been preparing for that all week. And I think this will have a little better of an outcome. The Vikings kept it pretty close in that first matchup. And I think if the Vikings can start off hot, go up maybe 10-0, 14-0 to start the half, to start the game, really, I think that the Vikings can definitely win this game. And that's just not me being a homer, but just kind of facts. Because when the Vikings are up by that much, yes, we kind of seen a different side of the Vikings after halftime, where they just kind of let their foot off the brake. They just, let everything in front of them. But I don't know. I think in the playoffs, there's a lot to play on the line. I don't think they'll necessarily play like that, where you give up everything after halftime, after being up that much. But just kind of saying, I think the Vikings got to start off strong if they want to win this game. And the Rams defense is definitely not super aggressive, where they blitz all the time. But I think I like the Vikings offense over the Rams defense in this game.
Yeah, I think the Vikings do have the little bit more talented team going into this game. So like I said, it's a game where they're favored to win as a road team, which I'm actually kind of surprised that the line hasn't moved to be a little bit more towards the Vikings, because yes, the Rams are home, like technically the home team, but it's at a neutral field essentially. So if you don't know, they usually get 3 points to the home team. So I was kind of shocked that they didn't move it towards the Rams. Towards the Vikings in this Rams game. So if like I said, if you're a betting man, I'd probably look towards the betting the spread on this one, towards the Vikings on this one. I kind of like them a little bit more,
I do have
but
an update for you.
I can understand the hesitation. What's that?
I, I do have an update. So the spread, according to Action Network, the Vikings are now minus 2.5 point favorites. So I don't know if that's kind of like a universal thing. I'll check a DraftKings right now too, just to see.
Mhm.
But let's take a look.
Yeah, because last time I checked, I think they
Still
were
two
in
and a
that
half.
ballpark of 2 points.
Still
Yeah, I
two and a
think they were
half
in that
instead of one.
ballpark of 2 points. So yeah, yeah, like I said, I think they were kind of in that ballpark of 2 points, kind of opening the books. And with the game moving to Arizona, I was kind of surprised that they didn't put the a little bit more points on the Vikings on this one. But but either way, you play games to win on the field. You don't bet it on a sports book. It's just kind of one of those things you look and you're kind of hoping that you get a little bit more points just to kind of show how strong your team is, or how much team or people are kind of believing in your team. So I think that's kind of the big thing. But I can understand the hesitation a little bit. So hopefully it's one of those things where they can kind of get hot and see if they can make a postseason run for a Super Bowl run. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, game is Monday night. We'll see the Vikings take on the Rams in Glendale, Arizona. Now, before we go, I do want to do like a little exercise with you, Drew. And for you guys listening at home too, or if you guys are watching on YouTube, we will be doing a playoff bracket. So me and Drew are gonna predict real quick, not too much time, who we think will make it to the Super Bowl. Just a fun little exercise we'll do just for the playoffs, and we'll update this every week as we go if you want to do that, and we'll go from there. So today we got the Chargers and Texans and Steelers and Ravens. Drew, who do we have for the first set of games?
I think I'm going to take the Chargers on this one. I think they're a little bit healthier. I kind of like their coaching a little bit more than the Texans a little bit. Jim Harbaugh has been a guy who has played in the big games. He's won a national championship. He's been to a Super Bowl, and he's kind of that motivator. I think that teams are kind of looking for. So I'll take the Chargers in this one.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think the Chargers are just a better team. The Texans are without Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, a lot of their
Mhm.
good offensive weapons. So Chargers have been pretty healthy most of this year. And I think Justin Herbert will have a really good game, and I think the Chargers will advance. So next we got Steelers and Ravens. For me, I personally had the Ravens in this one.
Yeah, I'll take the Ravens on this one too. The Steelers are just getting ice cold. I know a lot of Steeler fans are kind of a little upset with Mike Tomlin. I think they're kind of getting to that point where, I feel like it's one of those things where they've had the same thing happen with the same guy over and over again, and I think they're maybe some of them kind of want that change. But I do think Mike Tomlin's still a good coach. But the Ravens definitely have the more talented team. They have a Super Bowl winning head coach, so I'm going to take the Ravens in this one.
Okay, and then Sunday, I don't know what time slot it is, but we got Broncos and Bills. I think honestly there could be an upset here, but with the Broncos beating the Bills, but with the Bills being at home, Josh Allen playing to the MVP level that he is, that offense is doing really good. Defense is a little shaky at times, which why the Broncos could overtake the Bills, honestly, in an upset, but I personally do have the Bills in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bills as well. Me personally, I'm just not a big fan of rookie quarterbacks in the postseason. Like first year quarterbacks in the postseason, I should say. They just tend to not really, not that they don't show up, but that just things just don't really go their way. There is really kind of not a lot of guys who have been able to find the postseason success and then go on and then make a run. So I'm going to take the Bills. I just think that with it being on the road in Buffalo in the snow, I think just the factors are a little bit more favorable to Buffalo than Denver in this one. So I'm going to take Buffalo.
Yeah, I think the weather in Buffalo is going to be like 31 degrees, something like that, and then no snow. So, favor in Buffalo with the cold weather. But moving on to the NFC, we're going to say the Vikings and Rams for last. But tomorrow, Sunday, we have Packers and Eagles, which I feel like could be an underrated, really good game. I feel like all of these games, honestly, are really good. as far as NFC goes, throughout the whole playoffs, no matter who the matchups are, I feel like they're all really good. But Packers, Eagles, honestly, for the Vikings, quick side street here, but if the Vikings want a home playoff game, the Vikings would have to win. Packers would have to upset the Eagles, and then Washington would have to beat the Buccaneers, which is not out of the realm of possibilities. But Jordan Love is playing. Jalen Hurts is going to play. Jalen Hurts kind of is shaky right now because he's been off for 2 weeks. Maybe that can restore him back to full health, but still kind of it might be a little rusty. But who do we have in this Eagles and Packers game?
The Green Bay is a team that a lot of people seem to think could make that Cinderella story run, kind of similar to that 2010 Packers team from 15 years ago. So I do think that there's the factor of injury. Jalen Hurts hasn't been playing. But on the flip side, Packers just lost Christian Watson. Jordan Love is coming off a very minor injury, I should say. With the whole Bears game, they pulled him, but I think they kind of sat him more for precautionary reasons for that postseason run, because I think they kind of looked at Washington and they're like, yeah, they're gonna win. So they had that 7 seed kind of locked up already. So I think with this one, I think I'm going to take the Eagles on this. I just think that with Saquon Barkley, I think it opens up a lot in the running game. Jalen Hurts can still use his legs, even though he hasn't played in quite a bit. I think they'll just make it a little bit easier on him to throw the ball. So I'm going to take the Eagles in this game.
Yeah, kind of going back to the Eagles real quick. I feel like the Eagles honestly could be up by 10 plus points throughout this whole game. I don't know if Green Bay has a really good defense. Well, I don't know about really good. They have a good defense that I don't know if they'll be able to stop a guy like Saquon Barkley. And Jalen Hurts, if he does start clicking and these receivers start clicking in this postseason, I think the Eagles are going to be one of the scarier teams to play in that NFC. Hence why they are the 2nd seed. And they're still really good. Questionable team to begin the year, and then kind of find their stride. Going mid to late season. So moving on to Tampa Bay versus Washington. Tampa Bay's a sneaky good team, kind of inconsistent this year. Same with Washington too. They look like they had some promise. Ended the season 12-5. But this one's kind of a toss up too for me. I personally would pick the Buccaneers. I'm curious what you would pick.
I know earlier I did say that I don't really trust rookie quarterbacks, especially in the big spotlight of a playoff game. I do think that Dan Quinn is a very successful coach. I think he has gotten a little bit too much hate in the past, kind of dating back to his Atlanta Falcons days. I don't know if that was 100% on him. I just think that he didn't have the talent given to him as he did when he first started out in Atlanta when he made that Super Bowl run. So I do think that he's a good coach. But Washington is a team that's built on defense. So I think this will be a very good, close game. It's kind of a game I kind of feel like kind of has that like close game feel. I think it'll be a very competitive game, like kind of how it was when Minnesota and New Orleans were playing. It was very competitive, very gritty win for Minnesota back then. I think it'll be one of those games. So I'm actually going to take Washington in this one to have an upset, just because I feel like you got to have at least a wild card upset in every single conference. So I think there's always one. So I'm gonna take Washington to be my low seed to win this game.
And with that, I'm gonna jump ahead and presume that you will take the Vikings. But if that is the case, we'll only have 2 upsets so far in this wild card round. Do they even call it Super Wild Card Weekend anymore, or is it just Wild Card Weekend?
It's called Super Wild Card Weekend, but I just don't know if Minnesota beating LA would be considered an upset because they are a betting favorite. I know they're the lower seed, but I was just saying for the fact that I usually try to factor in at least one game against the spread. So right now I only picked one, with being the Washington game, because the Chargers are the favorite currently against the Texans, and the Vikings are also the favorite against the Rams. So I try to sprinkle in at least one or two games against the spread, and I just feel like this one's a little bit easier to have it with one game going into the betting odds. So that's why I kind of went with Washington.
Yeah, and that honestly doesn't even upset me because I feel like that could happen. You know, same with like even if you chose the Broncos over the Bills, that's something that definitely could happen. And I know like I'm prepared for honestly anything to happen in this super wild card round weekend. So, you know, moving on to divisional round, we'll see you guys next week for that. But you know, Drew, I do want to ask you too. What do you think? Well, let's say we get to the conference championship round for both NFC and AFC. What what do you think would be like the least attractive like teams going at it in that conference championship round?
Like the worst teams in the NFC going at it in the NFC title game.
Well, for both conferences. So like AFC, like I would have like the Steelers and like I don't know, I feel like Steelers and Broncos going at it in the AFC championship would be like really weird to see, and then maybe like Washington and the Rams for me, I feel like would be pretty
Yeah, I think that's kind of the same thing. I know the Chargers are pretty solid, but like I just don't really. I feel like that'd be like another one. Yeah, I know Jim Harbaugh's a good coach and all, but I just think that wouldn't really be an attractive one, just because given that the Chargers really don't have a lot of offensive weapons compared to some other teams in that conference. So I think another like the game that really wouldn't be attractive. I don't know if this is something I'm in the minority with, but the Chiefs kind of being there in the AFC title again, I think that's just kind of like it becomes repetitive. So I guess that could be a thing where if you're saying it's not an attractive one, or one that maybe could be like Chiefs and Bills or like Chiefs Ravens, somebody
yeah.
like that. I think that'd be one that's not really. It'd be good football. Don't get me wrong, but I just think it'd be one where it's just a little bit predictable. So maybe I'm hoping that maybe one team on Conference Championship Sunday is a team that we didn't really expect to be there. Kind of like how the Bengals were a couple years ago. No one really even thought that they had a chance to get in because I think their over under was about like
Yeah.
7.5 wins. Like they were pretty slept on. And after that first game where they ended up beating Minnesota, we were like, yeah, this team's going to be pretty solid. So even like when they had their postseason run, a lot of people didn't really believe in the Bengals, especially going to the Super Bowl that year. So I think it's kind of nice once in a while to kind of have that team that no one's really kind of looking at make a run towards a championship. So I do think a team that could do it very well could be the Vikings. I feel like a lot of people have jumped off the bandwagon because of one bad game. So
Okay.
hopefully that's a thing that we can kind of get them, the bandwagon. I guess you don't want bandwagoners on you to start rooting for you, but you kind of get that love and recognition and praise that a lot of people like. So I think that's just one thing. I think that if there's a team that could do it, I think it could be Minnesota.
Yeah, hopefully it is. Hopefully it is. Hopefully we see them in the next round facing the Detroit Lions in Detroit, for round 2 like Dan Campbell said. So, maybe Dan Campbell saw the script. But with that said, guys, I will leave it here. Super Wild Card Weekend kicks off in about 15 minutes here. So I'm going to let you guys go. Enjoy this episode. Maybe you guys are listening to this while you're watching these games tonight. But with that said, we'll see you guys next week. Win or if, I'm leaning towards win, the Minnesota Vikings beat the Los Angeles Rams in State Farm Stadium. So we'll see you guys next week, and Skol Vikes.